Right, so carrying on with the old Masters project and modern Masters. And, yeah. So this was one I started last week, and what I did was, well, I started with this orangey browny colour, put that everywhere, and then wiped out the highlights and put in the darks. So this could be just a general underpainting. So working from the Rembrandt image, but I think what he did do was he kind of gradually built paintings up in layers. So rather than just doing one finished layer, he probably started with some quite thin paint and then built the colours up with thin, what they call glazes. So what I'm going to do with this one, I'm going to use some painting medium. So this is really a mixture of, well, these are the water mixable oils, but traditionally you'd have like linseed oil and a little bit of solvent mixed together, maybe a bit of varnish mixed in with it to make a glazed medium. So I've done something similar but with the water mixable, so that's what I've got here. And so got a nice sort of slightly lighter flesh tone here, which I could put in some of these areas here. It's got a bit of green. And could do the same for the shadow area. So the nice thing about this is you can kind of gradually build the colours up, you can soften the edges out. And we've got some darker colours here that I can do the same with. And use the paint quite thinly to build up thin glazes, or a bit like a watercolour wash. You'll find that you then have some of the undercolour glows through. I've got a little bit around here, I think, so I'll just go for this slightly reddy colour. It's a bit too thick, I'll add a bit of that. Just make that look a little bit stronger. The nice thing about the oils is that you can create these nice soft edges, which is more difficult with acrylics. Just kind of put actually build it up like that. Yeah, so that would be how that would be gradually developed. The other one that I was looking at was the Turner painting. So that's this one. And again, he'd work in a very similar way. So this is the washy colour I put on last week, just in the water. But you can then add some paint with a little bit of oil mixed to it and just blend these colours in and these areas in. This one's on canvas, so it gives a nice softer look really to the canvas. So we can work that into the grain of the canvas. So looking at this area here. And again, I've just thinned the paint with a little bit of the medium. Another technique is to just do this kind of scumbling, so that you're painting quite thinly, and you can see some of the brush marks, but there's a little bit of a glow of the colours underneath, that slightly pinky colour.
Just random.
Yeah, it's just a kind of random, that sort of thing. Usually the paint's a little bit thicker, whereas a glaze would tend to be thinner paint, sort of kind of like that, just more watery paint. So that's that. These areas here, what he would do, paint the background, then he'd put thicker paint over the top. And quite often he's used a palette knife. So this is, I'll do a little bit of this and just show you. So these bits I did the other day, and actually I put some yellow over that this morning, and it is still there. They started off fairly white. So put on sort of thicker kind of textured marks. bit like that. So this is why I'm using the fast drying white we talked about, because white tends to be very slow drying. So I've got this white, which I'm just using with a palette knife, that should dry within a day or a couple of hours. Otherwise, this would just take forever. But the idea is to do something like that, and then you can let that dry, and then you should be able to glaze some more colours over the top. So this illustration here shows some of that. This is another Turner painting. But you can see, like, he's got thicker paint, that feels like a palette knife mark. Then he's put thinner glazes over the top, slightly darker, and you get that slightly glowing look. So I'll go over that again, but a little bit darker, just so you can get an impression of that. I'll use some of these reddy colours instead. So something a little bit like that. Maybe I'll wipe a little bit about that. So it picks up some of the texture of the paint. And then again, once that's dried, I'll do a bit of that. So, it's thin layers of paint. Partly this would have been, the old masters would have worked with thinner layers because it was, paint was expensive. They used to have to make their own paint. So you could only, we'd only go so far. And that way you get a better coverage by putting a few thin layers rather than thick. But also, when you go and have a look at paintings like in the National Gallery, you'll see that they are got a nice glowing feel, and that's because it's thinner paint, darker colours over lighter colours sometimes. So it's a different sort of approach. Next week I will do a little bit on the Impressionists, and that is a much more direct approach. So it's just like whatever the colour is and then pop it on. If it's lighter, they would just lighten it with white paint, adding white. So it just gives a different look to the end thing, and end result. Yep.
You see where the sun is, the yellow bit, and then
Yeah.
above that, and there's all this sort of yellow sky and stuff. Would that be with the thicker white paint as well, or not?
I'm not. What, this area
The
here?
sort of the yellow bit, like the yellow of the sun and the yellow above that, would that have been thicker or not?
That bit or higher? It's difficult to tell, really.
Like the light.
Oh, that bit.
Actually,
Sorry.
up
Yeah.
close, it doesn't
This
look
looks like it, doesn't it? Yeah. That looks like it's thickened paint. Yeah. I would think so.
But the lightest, the brightest yellows, they're not thick paint, are they? They're thin. Why?
I think they're thin, but I think they're possibly white underneath some of them.
Yeah, because I was thinking maybe that's how he's got that yellow so bright. It's some white underneath it.
Because it does glow. And the thing with orange is, if you mix white with orange, it tends to go very chalky looking and goes like a peachy colour.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if you put white down first, if we let that dry and then another week put some orange over it, that will really glow. That will look quite nice. But by just mixing white with it, that would, it does go quite chalky looking. Yeah, I think the red bit is probably, it's difficult to tell, but you may have just gone in with thicker areas of red.
But the yellow underneath that red, do you think that would have been?
Maybe, it could be. Yeah, it could have gone in lighter and then, glowing red over the top, Yeah, put a bit there and then experiment a little bit next week. Put some of that down. Let's see.
So
That might be quite good.
Paul's just gone straight for painting. You haven't drawn anything as such. You haven't drawn the image first.
No, not really. No, I've really. I suppose in terms of the image. So with things like the masts and the sails, he would have just done all that over the top. So the main shapes that there are to draw out are really just kind of this whole shape, and I did have that a bit more defined, but I ended up moving it down because I had it too high up. So, but just getting that kind of bit of the main bits, the paddle steamer. But I deliberately picked that one because there isn't too much drawing, and this one there's even less drawing, which is that one with the storm, which I thought is
amazing.
Yeah, it's quite a good one to play around with paint techniques because there's not too much drawing at all.
I found that one really nightmarish. That.
Yeah, I think
In
that's
a kind of good way, impactful kind of way, but
yeah, it is.
you really feel that.
Yeah. Okay, right, I can see how you're getting on.